If you have ever poured a bottle of weed killer on your driveway, watched the weeds turn brown by the next morning, and then watched the exact same weeds come right back 2 weeks later, this video is going to explain why that happened. There's a no-chemical method that visibly wilts most young weeds within 24 hours. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how it works, where it works, and just as importantly, where it does not. I'm not going to promise you a miracle, because the honest version of this is more useful than the hyped version. Most of what gets sold as a secret here is not actually a secret. It is household vinegar, salt, boiling water, and a flame. What almost nobody explains is the difference between burning the top of a weed and actually killing its roots. And that one distinction is the difference between a weed that stays gone and a weed that mocks you from the same crack in your patio a month later. Let me start with the method that genuinely does something in 24 hours, because that is what brought most of you here. The fastest visible result comes from acetic acid, which is the active ingredient in vinegar. Household vinegar sits around 5% acetic acid. Horticultural vinegar runs higher, often 20 to 30%, and that stronger version is genuinely caustic, so it deserves gloves and eye protection. When you spray vinegar directly onto the leaves of a young weed on a hot sunny day, the acid strips the waxy coating off the leaf, and the plant loses moisture fast. Within a few hours, the leaf starts to wilt. By the next morning, the top growth often looks dead. That is real. That is the 24-hour result. Here's the part the bottle never tells you. Vinegar is a contact killer. It destroys the tissue it touches, and almost nothing else. On a young annual weed that has barely established roots, killing the top is often enough, and the weed is finished. On an established perennial with a deep taproot, a dandelion, bindweed, thistle, the top dies, the root survives, and the plant pushes new growth within a week or two. So when somebody films a video of vinegar killing a weed overnight and calls it a permanent solution, they are showing you a true thing and quietly leaving out the second half. The United States Environmental Protection Agency classifies certain vinegar-based herbicides as minimum risk pesticides, which is part of why this approach appeals to people who do not want synthetic chemistry near their kids, pets, or vegetable beds. That classification is about the safety profile of the product. It is not a promise that it kills everything, and you should not treat it as one. Now, let me give you the upgrade that most people get wrong. The classic homemade recipe is vinegar, salt, and a squirt of dish soap. Each of those three does a specific job. The vinegar is the acid that burns the leaf. The dish soap is a surfactant, which simply means it breaks the surface tension, so the liquid clings to the leaf instead of beating up and rolling off. The salt draws moisture out of the plant and out of the soil. The salt is also exactly why you have to be careful. Salt does not break down. It does not biodegrade. If you keep pouring salt water onto the same patch of soil, you are slowly turning that soil into a place where nothing grows, and that includes the plants you actually want. So here is the honest rule. The vinegar and salt mix belongs on gravel paths, driveway cracks, patio joints, fence lines, places where you want a scorched earth result and you do not plan to grow anything. Keep it out of your lawn and out of your garden beds, because the salt will outlast the weed by years. For weeds growing in places where you do want things to grow later, drop the salt entirely and rely on the vinegar alone, accepting that you will need to reapply. Now let me show you the method that is almost foolproof, costs nothing, and that the people selling you bottles will never recommend because you already have it in your kitchen. Boiling water. A kettle of boiling water poured directly onto a weed ruptures the plant cells instantly through heat. For weeds in driveway cracks, sidewalk joints, and patio gaps, this is genuinely one of the most effective no-chemical tools that exists, and the result shows up within a day. The same root limitation applies. One pour kills the top. A deep perennial root may push back. But here's the quiet advantage of boiling water that almost nobody mentions. Because it is free, you have zero reason not to repeat it. Every time that root sends up new growth and you pour again, you are draining the root's stored energy. 3 or 4 rounds over a few weeks will exhaust most perennials. You're not buying anything, you're just being patient. A related method is flame weeding, using a propane torch designed for the purpose. You're not trying to set the weed on fire and burn it to ash. You're passing the flame over the leaf just long enough that the plant cells burst from the heat. The leaf will look barely change for an hour, then wilt and collapse. Obviously, you do not do this during a dry spell near anything flammable, near mulch, near a wooden fence, or anywhere a fire ban is in effect. Used sensibly on a damp morning over a stone path, it is fast and effective. So now you have the real 24-hour toolkit. Vinegar for fast leaf burn, salt only on permanent hardscape, boiling water for cracks and joints, flame for paths, used carefully. All 4 kill what they touch within a day, and all 4 share the same honest limitation on deep roots, which you defeat through repetition rather than through a stronger chemical. But if I stopped here, I would be doing the same thing those overnight videos do. I would be handing you a way to fight the symptom forever while ignoring the actual cause. Stop for a moment, because this is the part that matters more than any spray. A weed is not a random event. A weed is a report card on your soil and your gardening habits. Bare soil grows weeds because nature does not tolerate empty ground. Compacted soil grows certain weeds. A lawn mowed too short grows others. Every weed that keeps coming back is telling you something about the conditions that invited it. This is the honest reason your weeds always return, and it has nothing to do with which bottle you bought. You are killing the plant and leaving the invitation. I have put together a complete guide for the people on this channel who want to stop fighting weeds one by one and actually change the conditions that grow them, called the Forbidden Lawn Code. I want to be upfront with you about exactly what it is. It is a paid digital guide. The core methods, the vinegar approach, the boiling water approach, the flame approach, I have just given you in this video for free, because I think you should be able to act on this today without spending a cent. What the guide adds is the depth that does not fit in a video. The exact acetic acid concentrations and mixing ratios for different weed types, the schedule for exhausting perennial roots through repeat treatment so you know how many rounds and how far apart, the soil correction methods, mulching, ground cover, and overseeding strategies that actually stop weeds from returning by removing the bare ground and the compaction that invited them, and a region-aware approach, because what grows in a damp northern climate is not what grows in a dry southern one. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. If the free methods in this video are all you need, genuinely use them and skip the guide. I would rather you trust this channel than feel pushed. Okay, back to it. Because there is one more free technique I want you to have, and it is the one that prevents the problem instead of treating it. Mulch. A 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch over a garden bed does something no spray can do. It blocks the light that weed seeds need to germinate. Most weed seeds in your soil are sitting there waiting for sunlight. Bury them under mulch and they simply never wake up. And this is the difference between a gardener who sprays every weekend and one who barely weeds at all. The second one is not working harder. They covered the bare ground. For paths and gravel, the same logic applies with landscape fabric underneath, though even that is not permanent, and weeds will eventually root in the debris that collects on top, which is honest information the packaging tends to skip. Before I bring this together, I want to give you a way to read your weeds, because the single biggest mistake people make is treating every weed the same way, and then wondering why some die and some keep coming back. Broadly, weeds fall into 3 groups, and each one wants a different response. The first group is annual weeds. These live one season, grow from seed, set their own seed, and die. Chickweed, common annual grasses, and many of the small soft-leaved weeds that appear in spring fall into this group. The good news is that annuals have shallow, simple root systems, so the fast contact methods, vinegar, boiling water, flame, often finish them in a single treatment. The key with annuals is timing. If you kill them before they set seed, you break the cycle. If you let them flower and drop seed first, you have just planted next year's problem, even though this year's plant is dead. The second group is perennial weeds. These are the ones that drove you to search for a secret in the first place. Dandelion, bindweed, ground elder, thistle, dock. They store energy in deep roots or spreading underground stems, and that storage is exactly why a single spray never finishes them. The honest strategy here is not a stronger poison, it is persistence. Every time you remove the top growth, the root has to spend stored energy to regrow. Do that repeatedly, every week or 2 through the growing season, and you starve the root. With bindweed and ground elder in particular, do not rototill them, because chopping the roots into pieces simply creates dozens of new plants from the fragments. That is one of the most common ways people accidentally multiply the very weed they are trying to kill. The third group is woody weeds and brambles. These have genuine woody stems and extensive root systems, and contact methods barely touch them. For these, cutting low and repeatedly removing regrowth or careful digging of the root crown is far more effective than any spray you can mix at home. Be honest with yourself about which battle you're fighting before you reach for the vinegar. There is one more reading skill worth learning. Certain weeds indicate certain soil conditions. Plantain and other broadleaf weeds with rosettes often appear in compacted soil. Some weeds favor acidic soil, others favor poor drainage. You do not need to memorize a chart, but the principle is worth holding on to. When the same weed dominates an area year after year, the area is offering it something. Aerating compacted ground, improving drainage, and building up healthy soil with compost removes that something, and the weed loses its home field advantage. Now let me bring this together, because I want you to leave with a clear plan rather than a list of tricks. If you have a weed in a driveway crack right now and you want it gone by tomorrow, boil a kettle and pour it, or spray straight vinegar on a sunny afternoon. If it is a perennial with a deep root, commit to repeating that treatment every week or 2 until the root gives up. And do not be surprised that the first round was not enough, because now you know why. If the weeds are in a bed where you want to grow things, skip the salt. pull the established ones by hand while the soil is moist, and then mulch heavily so the next generation never germinates. And if you are tired of the whole cycle and want to fix the soil conditions that keep generating weeds in the first place, that is what the full system is for, and the link is below. There is one more thing that quietly decides whether your treatment works, and it is free to get right: weather and timing. Contact methods like vinegar and flame work best on a warm, sunny, dry day. Heat and sunlight stress the plant and speed up the moisture loss, so the same vinegar that struggles on a cool, damp morning can flatten a weed in hours on a hot afternoon. Spray when rain is not coming for at least a day, because rain within a few hours simply washes the acid off before it has done its work. Boiling water is the exception, since it works through heat rather than chemistry, so it does its job regardless of the forecast. Time of day matters too. Treating in the heat of late morning or early afternoon when the plant is actively moving water and the sun is strong gives you the fastest visible result, and catch weeds while they are young and small. A seedling has almost no stored energy to recover with. A mature weed with a developed root has reserves, which is another reason the same method seems to work brilliantly on one plant and barely dent another. It was often the size and age of the weed, not the method, that decided the outcome. A quick reminder on responsibility, because I take this seriously. Even natural methods deserve respect. Horticultural strength vinegar is acidic enough to burn skin and eyes, so wear protection. Boiling water will scald you, so carry the kettle carefully. Flame weeding near anything dry is genuinely dangerous, so use judgment. Natural does not mean harmless. Here is what I want you to picture. A month from now, instead of standing over the same weed with the same useless bottle for the 4th time, you understand what that weed is telling you. You treat it correctly the first time, and you have changed the ground so the next one never shows up. That is the whole difference between fighting weeds and being done with them. If this was useful, subscribe to this channel because everything I share here is built on the same principle. Tell you the honest version, give you what works for free, and let you decide the rest. I will see you in the next one.